Hello, Broncos country, and welcome to another edition of Orange Weekly After Dark. My name is Jason. As usual, I will be with you tonight. Go ahead and start posting your comments, questions, discussion topics that you would like to cover tonight, and we will start cruising right on through. We'll just get going right off the bat here. Travis, thanks for joining us tonight. Obviously, this is going to be one of the hotter topics the next about a week now. Roughly a week left in the season. The Broncos' last game will actually be on a Saturday now. So I guess the real discussion will be whether the coaching staff is fired on Sunday or if they wait till the typical Black Monday. What's up, Robert? How are we doing tonight? Yeah, obviously this is going to be, again, the hot topic. What does Peyton decide to do? Obviously, I think it's a safe bet at this point. Really, it's a safe bet for the entire staff to be gone. I would be shocked at this point if anyone stays. However, I would say that the one hypothetical that does still exist, small odds as it is what Travis just brought up right here, is there is a chance that Peyton decides to keep Fangio for one more year, clean house outside of that. So basically giving Fangio one more chance with the new staff. And how that plays out is going to depend on what they do at the quarterback position. If they bring in Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers and let them handpick their offensive coordinator, I don't know. But the reason, the logic and argument behind it would be Fangio's defensive capabilities. He has once again led the Broncos to one of the top defenses in the league. And so that's the argument to keep. I'm not saying I agree with it necessarily, but that's kind of the argument of what Peyton has to decide on what to do. So I would say at this point there are two options, one being far more likely than the other. The obviously far likely option is everyone's gone. But I would say there still does exist a chance that Fangio stays for another year without the rest of the coaching staff, and they bring in new coordinators and everything. Final few days of the worst 3 years in Broncos history. It's the end of the incompetent Fangio. No IQ Sherman, clueless McMahon. Yeah, I don't know if I would personally go as far as to say this is the worst 3 years in Broncos history. They did start off rather abysmal when they were started out as a football team. And keep in mind the 2 years of the Vance Joseph era, I could argue, were quite possibly even worse. But it is a dark period, that is for sure. 5 losing seasons now. It's definitely been a rough go. And that's one of the reasons why I think Fangio is gone. I think you mean if Peyton keeps incompetent Fangio, then Peyton is on the extreme hot seat. Yes and no. And I agree. I don't think Peyton will. I do think that it is, if Peyton does keep him, then yes, that the onus falls on Peyton. I don't know if it would put him on the extreme hot seat right away, because he started off so fantastic so far. I mean, if you look at the rookie draft class, if you look at the moves he's made in season to bring players into the team, they've all made immediate large contributions to this team. And there'll likely be a new owner at that point. He still has like 5 years on his contract after this year. So I do agree, if he keeps Fangio, then good or bad, it falls on him. I don't think it means that, again, we're talking pure hypotheticals here. If he does bring Fangio back and they have another losing season, I don't think that means Peyton's fired at that point as well. But I do agree that the onus does fall straight on Peyton at that point. I don't think he does. Again, I think it's a possibility. It's an option that Peyton does have to decide, is if he wants to risk losing that defensive calling, defense scheming abilities in a coach. However, I personally think that there are other options out there that could be just as good, if not better, at that front, while additionally being possibly better with a head coach role. And that's where I'm at. I think, at this point, we've had some rough years here. This is an extremely talented roster. If you look at it on paper, there's no reason this team is not making the playoffs this year. Is the easiest way to say it. And you can see you could hear the frustration, with this latest round of press conferences. Gordon was big on it too, just saying how frustrated the team is because they know that they're better. They know that they are better than 7-9, and yet they haven't been able to get anything going this year. And I do think that falls, in my opinion, I think the number one enemy is our wonderful, as Daniel Miller called him earlier, no IQ Shermer. I think that has been the largest issue with this team is we can't even find a way to get over 17 points in a game. And so it doesn't matter if your defense is the number one defense in the league or even top 3 defense. If your offense can't score points, it's going to put you in bad situations. Obviously, special teams were no favor to us this year. But I don't know if I would say that. To me, special teams makes or breaks you when you're good and you're competing for those final spots and you're pushing for playoffs, and it can be that special teams moment that flips the game. I don't think, even if our special teams were phenomenal this year, I think we'd still be 7-9. So as bad as our special teams was, I don't think that was the deciding factor in what turned out to be a losing season for the Broncos. And this is going to be another good question. I don't know. I have my own personal opinions on it, and that would be Locke needs to go. He has no future with the Denver Broncos. He's not a starter in the league. He'd make a fine backup, sure. But I think he has been given a 100th opportunity to prove that he can be the guy, and he's done nothing but prove he's not. He's played a bit smarter, sure. But I currently love the narrative that he's gone 2 games turnover free. Well, that's because the Chargers' defensive hands are made out of bricks and can't catch an interception that he gift wraps and ties with a bow and hands it to them. There should have been 2 interceptions early in that game, easily. But they dropped them, and that's the only reason why he remained turnover free. And so to me, that's the bigger thing is you're not going to be able to throw those type of passes and get away with it every game. And so for me, I think if this organization with an incoming owner, whoever that's going to be, you've got a fresh GM, he's going to be going into his first year of deciding how this team's direction is going to go, and making a big impact on the way he sees the team, how they should be run. I think at that point you need to clear house, and that includes your quarterback situation. The one caveat I would say is if you can't get Wilson, you can't get Rodgers, and so you draft a rookie quarterback, then you need to keep a veteran quarterback. And at that point, I would vouch for one more year of Teddy Bridgewater, to kind of be a bridge quarterback to kind of allow that gap to close for the rookie quarterback instead of throwing him in right off the bat. And the reason why I would pick Bridgewater is he's going to be the best free agent quarterback this offseason. That's all the analysts, experts, and everything are saying that it's a weak quarterback free agency this year. And Bridgewater's going to be the best. I think Locke is hands down far worse than Bridgewater. I think he makes stupid reads, stupid options. He tries to be the hero too much, and he has 0 leadership capabilities. And so, as far as what Peyton thinks, we'll find out in the coming weeks and months. Likely before the draft, we'll have an answer. Because I doubt he's going to go out and get Rodgers or Wilson and then also draft a quarterback behind them. So we'll find out in next weeks and months. But that's definitely going to be an interesting thing to watch for, is what Peyton decides to do with the quarterback situation. I think a few hours after another Broncos blowout loss, Fangio, Shermer, Munchak, video coaches will likely be gone. I agree. I think we wake up Sunday morning without a coaching staff. When it happens, we need a massive Orange Weekly celebration. Again, I don't know if they'll wait till the traditional Black Monday when you usually get all those firings. I I guess the one thing is if you do it on a Sunday, it would likely be overshadowed by all the playoff implications of those games being played. Um, and yeah, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting time. I'm going to hesitate on the celebration because, I mean, to be fair to Daniel, to this point, and here's why I'm going to be cautious. We all threw a celebration when we got rid of Vance Joseph. We got rid of Vance Joseph, and everyone celebrated. Everyone said that the worst is over. We can only go up from here. And 3 years later, we're exactly where we left off. So I'm going to be cautious. I'm not going to celebrate until I see who we get to replace, and how they do with this team, with this organization, because we've been burned before in celebrating a bit too soon. Hey, Brad, appreciate it. Thanks for joining us tonight. We definitely love it when you guys join in the conversation. So thank you for your comment. Will Judy be back for the last game? I don't know. It's definitely possible. It's all depend on the COVID situation, right? I don't know if he has symptoms. I don't know if he's continuing to show symptoms. And that's kind of the biggest part right now is if these players are showing symptoms or not. So it's definitely possible that he comes back. But also speaking of COVID news, just today, McManus and Martin, our punter, were both placed on the COVID reserve list. There is still time for them to be back on Saturday's game, but has yet to be seen. But it will be interesting, to say the least, if the Broncos go into the final game of the season without their kicker and punter. I think that would pretty much sum up the type of year we've all experienced. Teddy, I believe, is doing better. He is still under the concussion protocol. They have already determined that he will be out for the final game of the season. It will be Drew Lock, depending on his shoulder health. Which, I mean, he finished the game. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to play this final game, that being Drew Lock. But from my understanding, Teddy's doing okay, especially for how big of a knockout he had. But he will be out for this last game of the season, and he'll enter free agency. And again, that'll just be another potential piece of the puzzle that Peyton has to decide what direction he wants to go with. Why doesn't Vic Fangio blame himself and not others? I'll be honest, I don't listen verbatim to a lot of the press conferences. I watch the highlights and the clips and the kind of sound bites. I think he's in a position where until he knows for sure he's not going to be the coach, he's going to continue to exude confidence in himself. I mean, he's vying for his position right now. He's absolutely trying to convince Peyton to keep him, as anyone who possibly might be fired soon would do. And so, at this point, I don't think he has a history. This is the thing. It's not like he does this every week from the beginning. I think this is kind of a narrative that's kind of coming to play lately, and particularly with some people saying how he speaks differently about Locke compared to Bridgewater. I think there's reasons behind that. I think people are looking too far into that. But point being, Fangio, until he's not the coach officially, he's going to continue to try to vie for that opportunity to continue to coach for this team. And so to do that, he's got to exude confidence and exude, that he has a plan for the future to turn the offense around, instead of, going up to the podium and saying, yeah, I'm the worst coach ever. Well, that's not going to be a very convincing argument to keep your job. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Yeah, probably. And the reason, yes and no. I'm sure they'll start interviewing some people that they can. They'll start requesting interviews. But usually, if you're after a coach who is coaching the playoffs, they won't want to be interviewed until their team's eliminated, which is totally understandable. I think the biggest name on the board right now for the Broncos is Dan Quinn. And obviously he's the current defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. And so it would, in that situation, it would depend on the Cowboys situation, how far they go into the playoffs as far as when we can line up an interview for him. But so yeah, they might talk to a couple coaches who are not in the playoffs, as well as start requesting permission to interview for other coaches that are in the playoffs. but we won't be able to interview them until their team is eliminated. Um, can we make Drew the kicker and punter? You know what? Might as well at this point. You know what? With how much he likes to just sling the ball into triple coverage, we might as well just have him arm punt it the entire game if necessary. But I mean, it will be interesting too. You know, if that's the case where we don't have McManus and Martin, I wouldn't be surprised if we go for it on pretty much every fourth down and go for the 2-point conversion if we're able to get a touchdown. So at that point, you really have nothing to lose. I mean, you're already out of the playoffs. You're not expected to win this game, and you're playing the Chiefs. So really the only saving grace of this season, which, yes, is a massive consolation prize at best, would be to beat the Chiefs in that losing streak against them. And so, and keep in mind, too, you know, this is going to be a game where, you got coaches who are trying to keep their job. You've got a handful of these free agents who are trying to make a statement on why they should be brought back. Even Drew Lock, right? Drew Lock is going to have to make his final case on why the Broncos shouldn't just absolutely get rid of him, which I think that decision should already be made, and it's too late for him. But I mean, if we're looking at some of the free agents for this offseason who are going to have basically one last game to show their worth, you got Kyle Fuller, Melvin Gordon is going to be a big one, right? Looks like Bryce Callahan, Kareem Jackson. Obviously, we know about Bridgewater, Bobby Macy, Stephen Weatherly. I really hope we keep him. And then, a decent amount of others on top of some restricted free agents, which obviously aren't as massive a deal as the unrestricted, as far as it's a lot easier to keep the restricted free agents. And so for a lot of these players, it's going to be, again, their last opportunity to, if they want to stay with the Broncos organization, to show Peyton what they have, or even if they don't want to come back to the Broncos, to kind of show the market what their value is. And so it's going to be a lot of guys that are playing for their next job, essentially, their next contract. Despite all our coaching, QB, and injury issues we had this year, I think the team has performed okay, considering the guys that filled were pretty gutsy. And I agree. I think, especially, we did have some injury issues first half of the season, especially. And this team found a way to fight. But that was, the strategy going into this year was really play safe, play conservative, and try to keep games close and win them at the end. Put your team in these coin flip type of situations to win them at the end. The issue with that is, and I think this was Albright who even mentioned this today, if you play coin toss games, you're going to get coin toss results, right? And so whether that was the best strategies this year, obviously hindsight's 2020, so you can make arguments against it. But you're right. I think the guys that were always asked to step in did pretty well. Even this past week where we had 10 guys missing because of COVID, I think there were a handful of guys that really stepped up, were called up from the practice squad and played pretty well. And I think that's encouraging for the future of this team. I really think that if Peyton handles this offseason correctly, namely getting the right staff, and if he's able to find a way to get Rodgers or Wilson, this is absolutely a Super Bowl contending team. Again, you might want to shore up some of these, free agents you might be losing, or keep a couple of them. I would like to keep Melvin Gordon, Bryce Callahan, Kareem Jackson for sure. Stephen Weatherly again. But this is a talented roster. I mean, look at our offense that's locked up, right? I mean, Javonte Williams has turned out to be an absolute stud. Our receiver core is locked up. Our offensive line is decent. So on the offensive side of the ball, we're on paper, pretty set. Defensively, we're not defense right now. We're one of the top defenses in the league. If you're able to keep some of these free agents, you're back in business. And so I don't think this team is like a Jaguar situation where we're so far off that this is going to take years of a rebuild of 3, 4, 5 really well off seasons to just get into the mix again. This is a team that is still, I think, right on the verge of massive success again. And if Peyton does his job this offseason and does it very well, I absolutely think this is a team that will not only make the playoffs next year, but could make a push for to make a Super Bowl appearance at least. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know if this game will be a blowout. It very well could be. But again, I think there's a lot more on the line for the Broncos this game, in terms of individual aspects, than there are necessarily for the Chiefs. Chiefs are already in the playoffs. They might be playing for a seed position. Um, but again, you got a lot of guys with their backs against the wall trying to fight for a contract next year. You got coaches who are trying to convince, not only to stay, but again for a contract maybe next year with another team. You got the final home game of the season, all this kind of stuff. So we'll see. It might be. I could see this game going anyway. Honestly, I could see it being close. I can see it being a blowout for the Chiefs. We'll see. I don't think I don't think I can say confidently the Broncos are going to win, but I do think it's going to come down to the wire. Jennifer, thanks for joining us tonight. Maybe the Broncos should look at hiring an offensive-minded coach instead of hiring another defensive coordinator. And I've heard this argument, and I'm not opposed to it. We've obviously seen, the likes of Kyle Shanahan and that kind of thing, and how that's been successful. And again, I think for me, it comes down to what the overall strategy is going to be. Meaning, if I'm Peyton and I'm confident I can get Wilson or Rodgers, then I'm not so concerned about having an offensive-minded coach, because you're going to have very offensive-minded quarterbacks who can run the system very well, can call audibles, see the field well, and might even give them the opportunity to handpick their offensive coordinator, who they're going to work well with. And so if that's the case, then I want a defensive-minded head coach, such as the likes of Dan Quinn. Now, on the flip side, to your point here, if that's not the plan, if your plan is to draft a quarterback and with the hopes of him being the long-term solution, then yeah, I agree. I think at that point, you look for an offensive-minded head coach that's going to help that young quarterback establish himself, gain some confidence in the league. And so, I don't necessarily think either one is the right answer, but either one could be the wrong answer depending on which kind of direction Peyton decides to take on this team. I disagree with this. I'll say that right now. I think it's absolutely more than possible. I mean, if you look at half of the teams in the league, the head coach calls whatever plays for whatever mind they are, whatever their background is. I mean, you've got LaFleur and Green Bay, and again, Rodgers can audible, but he kind of calls in the plays. You've got Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan's running that offense. I mean, let's be real. And Kyle Shanahan is an outstanding coach. Definitely a miss that the Broncos could have had. I mean, let's be real. It's less disagreements, Kevin, and me just explaining why you're wrong again, as usual. But I mean, again, look at Kyle Shanahan. He's running that offense. Again, pick half your coaches in the league, and they're also calling in plays for that side of the ball. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think. I think that being able to be a head coach is more about your leadership, and your motivation factor. And so if you can motivate a team, if you can lead a team, and also you have that background in calling offensive plays or defensive plays, then yeah, have at it. Again, Kyle Shanahan being the and this is to your point. No, I don't think he would, because I don't think he has the qualities of a head coach. Again, mainly being, I think large scale, a lot of people don't understand that just because you make a good offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, that you're going to be a good head coach. You might be able to see the game really well. You might be able to read it really well, call the perfect plays, dial up the perfect plays. But that doesn't translate to the head coach position requirements. And again, the big two are the leadership and the motivational factor. Can you keep your team motivated? Can you keep them level-headed, right? Don't get too high, don't get too low. And can you lead them through whatever adversity that your team faces? Those are the qualities. And if you either have that or you don't, if you have that, and you're also able to play call because that's what got you there, then awesome. But to your question, no, I think if you took away from day one, if you took away the defensive play calling from Fangio, I would speculate that our defense would not have been nearly as successful, and Fangio still would have made the mistakes he made. Clock management, poor challenges, listening to whoever in the booth is telling him to still challenge. I mean, at this point, if that person radioed down to me, "Hey, challenge that play," I would tell him to just lick a boot, get out of here. I mean, why he still listens to this guy, whoever this guy is, telling him to challenge these plays, I don't know. But why he still listens to him, I don't know. Point being, um, those mistakes would still be made whether or not he was calling defensive play calls or not. That's my opinion. And again, I think if you look across half the league, half the head coaches are also calling in plays or at least heavily into it. Sean McVay's another one with the Rams. He's absolutely running that offense. And so I think head coach position is just another subset of qualities that you either have or you don't. I hope KC loses in the playoffs. We all do. We all do. Any news on KJ Hamler's rehab? Hope he is ready to go next season. And are guys like Jake Fromm and Kyle Trask gettable? So to answer your first question, I haven't heard too much on his rehab. I'm sure. I mean, we've got months and months and months until next season. So absolutely, he's going to be ready for next season. I'm sure it's progressing well. I haven't heard any negative setbacks on his rehab, so I'm sure he'll be back 100% ready to go. In terms of the likes of Jake Fromm and Kyle Trask, I'm sure they're gettable, right? You're definitely going to pay less of a price for them, much less of a price for them than the likes of Wilson or Rodgers. And again, that's the thing that the Broncos have that not many teams do, is they have the cap space to pretty much sign or trade for whoever they want right now, and they have the draft capital to do it. They are loaded with draft picks right now, thanks to Peyton's trading and wheeling and dealing and all of that. So again, Fromm and Trask are gettable. Does that mean we should? Maybe not. I haven't seen anything from Jake Fromm, especially that I'm excited about. At that point, I would rather draft a quarterback at that point and hold on to those draft picks for something else. It's a decent QB class. It might not be the strongest we've seen, but we've also had years where they've said that, and it turns out to be some of the best quarterbacks as well. Matt Corral is the Ole Miss quarterback. He's currently rated number 1. We'll see. He did have an ankle injury in his bowl game the other night. We'll see if that has any impact on his draft board. But you got then Pickett from Pittsburgh is the other kind of one that they're saying might go number 1 in terms of quarterback positions between those two. Then you got a few rounding out from there. But yeah, if we're looking at Fromm or Trask, I'd rather just draft a quarterback at that point. Interesting question. Who will make the Super Bowl? I think Green Bay is just on a roll right now. Aaron Rodgers is having fun, playing confident. Him and Devontae Adams is just an unfair duo right now. And so I think it's going to, I could see definitely the Green Bay Packers making the Super Bowl. As far as the AFC, it is completely up for grabs. I think we've seen pretty much just about everybody beat everyone in the AFC this year. The Ravens have dropped a little bit, but they've been without Lamar Jackson. And so they're going to get a boost when they get Jackson back, which might be as soon as this week. You've got, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but the Patriots are back in it. They held on to the number 1 seed there for a minute. Bills are starting to pick up momentum again. I hate to say it, but if we're being realistic, Kansas City has a chance to make the Super Bowl. I think it'd be stupid for us to say that's unreasonable to say. And so AFC is totally up for grabs. I think it's going to make the AFC playoffs one of the more interesting ones because truly anyone can win on the AFC side at this point, whoever makes the playoffs. And so the biggest thing is if you're not in the playoffs yet, get in there, right? We're going to see a big playoff implication game between the Chargers and the Raiders. Whoever wins that game is going to be in the playoffs. And again, from there, who knows what can happen. Cousins and Minshew have definitely heard that. And I agree with this too. This is going back, I believe, to the Fromm and Trask. They would be bridge QBs to get us through the year at best. But yeah, exactly. To me, it's replacing Teddy with Teddy. And so I would rather keep those draft picks and see if you can. And again, it works both ways, right? I think if you're getting a bridge quarterback, Bridgewater is going to be the best free agent quarterback. You try to sign him. Now, again, if he's asking for an unsorted amount, or if he wants, a 5-year, 6-year deal, then you got to move on a different direction. But we'll see. In terms of Cousins and Minshew, I don't see Minnesota getting rid of Cousins. And Minshew is too much of a wild card for me. I think, if we go for Minshew, again, that's a bridge quarterback at best. He has upsides, but he's got a decently high ceiling, but he's got a very low floor, right? He's got a very low basement in terms of how bad he can be. So it's a wild card with him. You don't really know what you're going to get out of him. And so I think that's where that hesitate might come from. But you're right. I have heard those names too, especially, with Cousins being so far we've seen a lot of the Vikings connection with Peyton and Peyton going after Vikings players. And so we'll see. I wouldn't mind Cousins. I think Cousins is a pretty solid quarterback, can read the field very well, makes smart throws, smart decisions. Anyone who watched their game last night knows that he's not much of a runner. But hey, neither was Peyton Manning, and he was okay too. And so you're right. The Cousins will be an interesting name floated about because, again, of that connection of Peyton and the Vikings. However, I don't know if the Vikings would be willing to part ways with Cousins. So either way, it's going to be an interesting offseason. We're going to find out a lot about Peyton, how he wants to run the team, how he envisions the future of this team, because that's what's going to totally shape his decision-making over the next several months. Again, everything from figuring out the quarterback situation, who he's going to draft, the draft needs, who you're going to bring back from, your free agent pool. We've got lots of cap space. Not too many teams in the NFL can say that. And so can we use that to our leverage a bit? Maybe poach a couple players from other teams because they're in a desperate need to dump some salaries to make cap space. All that kind of thing. It's really Peyton's offseason to lose at this point. He can run this in a few directions that I think could be successful. And again, he's got a lot going for him in terms of the draft capital and the cap space he has. And so we'll see what comes out of it. It's going to be interesting for sure. Unfortunately, it's going to be another long offseason for us in terms of not making the playoffs. But again, I think we're close. We almost made the playoffs with poor coaching and an injury-riddled team and average quarterback play. Bridgewater is very average this year, and I think, I'm definitely not going to say he's a top 5 quarterback, but I'm also not going to say he's a bottom 10 quarterback. He's very average. He's, 15th, 16th of the back type situation. The games we played with Locke are about what you would expect with Locke. His QBR, ESPN QBR from this game was 18.8. Just for comparison's sake, if you're curious, Justin Herbert's was 90.3. And again, you heard that right. His was 90.3. Drew Lock's was 18.8. That's what you get out of Drew Lock. You get stupid throws, and again, 2 of them should have been picked off. But you might get some big plays out of him, but that's because he takes a lot of bold, just risks that he shouldn't take, that sometimes they pay off. Other times they get intercepted. And again, he's constantly trying to be the hero, trying to do too much. And so I think his future with the Broncos ends Saturday against the Chiefs. At this point, I think he's, and to a degree, I want him to play well because that's going to drive up his draft capital. What teams might be willing to pay for him. But at the same time, I think he's absolutely, you got to find a way to trade him this offseason. Find a team that's desperate for a quarterback and offload him. See what you can get for draft picks and see if you can use that to turn around and get Rodgers or Wilson. So again, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I'm going to start wrapping up here in a little bit, guys. So go and start throwing out your last questions or discussion comments. Brad, you're saying, I think big changes are inevitable across staff and players. Just hope we don't lose too much talent to get a big name QB. Can draft picks help snagging a big name? And yeah, absolutely. And you're right. We don't want to, sell the farm for a quarterback and all of a sudden he has no one to throw to. But absolutely, when you're looking at a team who might be willing to trade a Rodgers or a Wilson, the biggest thing they're looking for is draft picks, right? Because they're essentially saying we're trading our future, or we're trading our right now for our future. And so, and you might have to throw in a big name or two, but the biggest thing are the drafts. They're going to want those draft picks to try to make up for what they're giving up. And so, I would say something along the lines, and we've seen all kinds of numbers, speculations, rumors, but you're just going to see anywhere around a total of 5 to 6 draft picks spanning multiple years, right? So you might be talking a first, third, and seventh for this year, and then a first and fifth for the following year, and then followed up with Jerry Jeudy might be one we have to sacrifice, maybe Noah Fant, but I think we have enough talent on the offense where we can get rid of one, maybe two of our players, throw it in with a bunch of draft picks, and that in theory would be enough, generally speaking, for a team. Whether the Seahawks or the Packers would take that deal, that's a different discussion. But absolutely, the good news is draft picks is keen when it comes to those kinds of trades. And the Broncos have a lot of draft picks, not just this year, but next year. We have a decent amount as well. So we can definitely package a deal, span the next couple of years, and not be hurting too bad from that as well. So, all right, guys, with all that being said, definitely appreciate you joining me tonight on the heels of a disappointing game where the Broncos are officially eliminated from playoff contention. So once again, since our Super Bowl run, we will not be making the playoffs. But there's hope for the future. We'll keep hoping for the best. Hopefully, some good changes are going to be made from the owner to coaching staff to quarterback and all that stuff. So hopefully it's an exciting offseason for us, with lots of big news, lots of encouraging news, and lots of reasons to stay optimistic. So with that being said, guys, don't forget to tune in to the rest of our content this week. Our main shows tomorrow at 7:00. We also got podcasts coming your way, post-game, pre-game. We will have our tailgate talk an hour before kickoff for the Chiefs game. And again, that is on Saturday now, in addition to our halftime hash, where we talk all things Broncos during the halftime. So you don't have to worry about watching the halftime report on TV, where they just show highlights of other games and watch a bunch of commercials. So with all that being said, guys, I'm signing off. As we are seeing here, Denver Broncos for life. Jerry's giving one last fire all the coaches. With all that being said, guys, hey, enjoy the final game as much as you can, because it'll be the last game we get until preseason of next year. So enjoy it while it lasts. Take it all in. And with all that, as usual, signing off with a go Denver Broncos.